a lack of no, a lack of knowing the environment. A lack environment surrounding, they would usually turn up to knowing the environment ways of environment things that are not surrounding, they would usually turn up to knowing the environment ways of environment things that are not surrounding, they would usually turn up to knowing the environment against the environment. So some countries do not emphasizing the law, which means that the law, it should make different towards the environment, and like to really make make a change for their country. So for example, like no environmental act, and like they have no, and like next we should say that for example, I would just say that about law, right? We also can like put in like a social engineering, when you can build, it can be a community that cater to the environment, then can ensure the long-term sustainability. So for me, that for them to make sure that everything that they do is going to be sustainable for the long run, and like, and also like as act of strong mitigating tool for people to less likely to commit this offense. And for me, they would I think that this would make them scared to be locked in a prison, because like uh and then like and then we're gonna talk about the if they don't have the uh I mean, like if they don't have the uh accountability measure, they're also gonna be like selling their house and like selling their kids. That is really bad for themselves to build the economy. And I think that's it. And like, for example, if like the country itself do not have implement law, for example, not implement law very restrictively, like it's gonna be the is people do not have introducing the people not aware about the environmental, for like for example the poor country do not like really emphasizing the restriction of law, because like they also have a lot of things to sort of like, if that is not, if that's the problem, people would not change to developing countries, since like they do not have to rely on a big matter, then rather than small, then rather implement ready for themselves. For example, the for the government to not have to, they do not have to focus on other things like that. No.
Brother, is it okay if I ask a POI?
Yes.
As you have told first, you pointed that there can be a bad transition on these countries if we don't make these policies. So, are you saying that these policies can help them develop their country?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. What?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay, so as you have said in the first point, we said bad transitions on countries for, like, if you don't make a policy, they cannot develop their country. So are you saying that these policies can help them develop their country?
um, for example, we take Malaysia, right? In Malaysia, we develop, we are the wait. Let me see.
Okay, I think let's call to order.
Okay.
Thank you. Now let's welcome the third speaker of the government side. The government speak to the floor.
Okay, yeah, before we continue, so Alish Azani, you're the DLO just now, and then Syed Naufal, you'll be doing OpWhip, right?
Yes.
Okay. And also, like, I'm not sure if Alif couldn't hear me just now, but after your speeches, before the next speaker, just give me 1 minute for me to write down the remarks. So, yeah. All right. Yeah, Gavin?
Chairperson. Chairperson, can I speak now?
Yes.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I bid to the respected judge, speaker, timekeeper, our worthy opponent from the opposition side, my colleague from the government side, and members of the hall. Good morning to all of you. I'm Atika Natasha, standing here as the third speaker of the government. Will carry on the task of rebutting the floor points given by the leader of opposition and also the deputy leader of opposition. Lastly, I will conclude this debate as a whole. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, leader of opposition said in his rebuttal that poor countries can make policies through education, which what he asked of us, critical areas that we like to focus on. Okay. And his argument stated that poor countries are the growing contributor to curb climate change, but we're focusing on the main contributor right now. It's better for these richer countries to take more part. Why? My question is, why developed countries should be the one to curb climate change? This is because even though all countries, regardless of their level of development, play a role in the fight against climate change, however, developed countries have historically been the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions due to industrialization and the burning of fossil fuels. As a result, these countries have a greater responsibility to reduce their emissions and transition to cleaner, more sustainable form of energy. Furthermore, developed countries have the resources and technology to implement effective climate policies and support developing nations in their efforts to mitigate and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Ultimately, it will take collective action from these developed countries to address this global challenge. He also stated that small nations are developing, so that's why they should make policies to curb climate change. But we need to take note in our mind that small nations are developing in a very slow progress rate. In the same time they are growing, the climate change need to be curbed by who? By more developed countries. This is because they have more opportunities to do policies, they have more resource and technologies to do one.
You are?
Well, no. Okay, and also, opposition leaders stated that we should regulate now. And who are we? Is my question. The poor countries, rich countries, the government side. In this, to answer this question, rich countries should be the one contributing more to make policies. Our government side not stating that poor countries don't need to help in curbing climate change. We're just stating that they don't have the obligation to make policies as one way to curb climate change. They can curb climate change in another way. Okay, we also want to answer that question with we are not in the one like leader of opposition say, because we don't encourage these poor countries to make policies because they have other priorities to focus on. They have challenges um they need to fight before make policies to curb climate change, which bring me back to our motion that we don't want to make policies as an obligation on to curb the climate change, because in order to make policies they need more resources than we thought. Okay, so it's more on the responsibilities of the developed countries. Next, deputy leader of opposition stated that all about rules and regulations, right? And he also stated that poor countries will not change to be more developed if they don't focus on climate change. Of course, because they have other priorities to focus on in order for them to be more developed. There are a lot of areas you need to focus on to be a developed countries, not only just in curbing the climate change. Okay? You're saying, and you're also saying that your words and your sentence is more like poor countries are selfish because they don't make rules and policies in order to curb climate change. Because we support that they're not obliged to. They have more responsibilities. They have to put their focus on their priorities to curb other things. They are having lack of resources. They don't have basic needs. That is what they should focus on. And because of their lack of resources to do so, they might care of climate change, not like the selfish way you mentioned of them. But they might care of climate change in another way than creating policies. Okay? And does that mean that if they don't make policy, then they are not gonna be developed countries? That is the question. And now, I will conclude the debate and convince you why this motion should be accepted and stand. There is one clash that happened in this debate, which is regarding the role of which countries to make policies to curb climate change. The opposition side stated more that poor countries should be the one also to create policies to curb climate change, but we from the government side stated that richer countries should be the one to create or to have an obligation more to create policies in order to curb climate change because they are more capable and more resourceful. Last but not least, I would like to emphasize again that we from the government side will stand with this motion 100% because we stand with our stance that richer countries are more responsible and capable to curb climate change. Hence, that's why we from the government side should win today's debate as stated previously by my colleague that poor countries are not obliged to make policies simply because they need to focus their priorities on development priorities and historical responsibility. With that being said, I would like to rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Government Sweep. Next, whenever you're ready, Judge.
Thank you. Just 1 minute. All right, thank you, Gopwit. Let's have the Awkward now.
All right, am I audible?
Yep.
Yes. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Chair, after a long debate, I'm gonna re-summarize everything, and I'm gonna tell you what we agreed on, what we didn't agree on, and as well as the two clashes in this debate, right? And lastly, I'm gonna just give you like a brief summary of what we have presented to you from side opposition. So what exactly have we agreed on? I think the only thing that we managed to agree on in this debate is about the definition of what a poor country is, right? Even though it sounded like contentious, I think at the end of the day, it was like we both agree, right? We know what a poor country looks like. We know the situations, the circumstances going through by a poor country. So definitions are fine, right? Now, note that okay. So when moving on to what we disagree, I'm going to include that within the clashes. So what exactly were the clashes that occurred into this debate, right? So the first clash is whether or not these poor countries are capable of implementing these policies effectively, right? So what exactly were the points brought up by side government? So side government's whole case that were brought up by all three speakers is quite similar, right? What they try to say is that poor countries, they do not have the resources to do so, and and this is because they have other more pertinent matters to be catered to, and this looks like having to focus on healthcare, having to focus on clean water, or just daily sustainability, right? And aside from that, they also said that even if we were to implement uh these policies, that they will not be effective, right? Or there are no means to there's no indication that these policies will be effective, right? And they tried to put a burden on us asking what kind of policies will we implement in the first place, which I think should have been their burden. They should have shown us what exactly these policies look like. But it's okay. Our second speaker even answered this, right? We told you that these are policies that look like having to set certain laws. For example, having to set certain laws where you have to follow these green procedures. And if you are in breach of these laws, you will be persecuted. And this persecution looks like having to be imprisoned or getting a fine. And we told you that it's going to be effective because uh, these poor people, they already, they don't have a lot of money, right? So if they were to have to sustain a fine, this would lead them to go to extreme measures just to right the wrong, right? So and this looks like having to sell their house, and even in the worst cases, they will, considering circumstances, might even have to sell their kids, right? Like for example, the kids have to be employed, uh, and so on and so forth, right? And lastly, the government tried to point out that the main concern, the main issue is that the rate of development of these poor countries will be slower than that of the rate of climate change, right? So what exactly did we tell you, right? We told you that it doesn't need to have that much resources in the first place to implement these policies, because we told you that it could be implemented by education and so on and so forth, right? So the country isn't spending like bucket loads of money to implement these policies. So therefore, there's not much resources that are being wasted in the first place. Now, secondly, regarding the rate of development is slower rate of climate change, we think that like doesn't really matter. I mean, as long as they're doing it, we're okay with it, you know? Okay, but moving on, so therefore we prove that actually these poor countries, they are capable of implementing these policies, and there is a sense of effectiveness to it. Now, second clash, whether these bigger countries are the main contributor to climate change, right? So government said that rich countries contribute more, they have more resources to combat it, they are more responsible, and they are the ones that should be obligated to these policies, right? However, we told you that these smaller countries should be held accountable as well, because if not, these smaller countries will never implement them, right? They will never want to use their green policies or green procedures. So I want you to note that government's whole stance is that these poor countries can implement these policies if they want to. It's just that they must not be obligated to do so, right? However, we tell you that if you give them that option, they will never take it, right? Because um yeah, these poor countries, they can always say that, oh, we have better things to do and whatnot, right? So this means that they will never be implemented, and we told you, like, if it doesn't start now, then it will never start at all, right? Even when they've become when they become a really, really big country, really strong country, then they won't want to implement anything, right? Then this was mentioned in my first speaker, right? Yeah, and then we also told you that obviously we can implement the policies concurrently at the same time we are developing. So that way, at least we ensure that there is a more structured or more developed, more solid foundation towards their development, towards their transitioning phase into becoming a developed country, right? So therefore, we win on both clashes, right? So as a whole, right, the arguments that came from government side is only two arguments that I could see, right? Which is how it doesn't fulfill the development needs of a poor country, that's one government, and secondly, how they said that bigger nations are the main contributor. However, on our side, we gave you three arguments. Firstly, about how exactly poor countries is a growing contributor to climate change. Second, about how we promote holistic economic growth for these poor countries. And lastly, how enacting these policies would act as accountable measures for these poor countries. Therefore, we have proved to you why exactly the obligation, it is just for us to set an obligation onto these poor countries to mitigate climate change as much as possible. Even though we didn't prove why exactly these poor countries are the biggest contributors, we tell you that they hold enough effect for them to have an obligation to make an effort to battle climate change. For all those reasons, proud to oppose.
Yeah, I'm good. We can move on to the reply speeches.
Right, thank you, President Sweet. Now it is time for the preparation of reply speech. The time given for each team will be 4 minutes. Debaters, please use the 4 minutes to prepare your reply speeches.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I would like to thank my VIP, and I would like to start. First off, I understand the government's concern, but I would like to rebut your second argument of about responsibility. Responsibility should not be debated in the first place because we, the opposition, doesn't even say that the
Sorry.
developed nations.
Right now is the time for the preparation of the reply speech. It's going to be 4 minutes. And after 4 minutes, you're going to start your reply speech.
Sorry, wait. We doesn't even say that. We doesn't even.
Sorry. What was it? What was your concern, Chair?
Right. The preparation of the reply speech will be 4 minutes. And then we will proceed. We will start with the reply speech. Right now is the preparation.
Yeah, so yeah, take your time to prepare. Go ahead.
I apologize.
I mean, it's okay. If you don't want to prepare, you want to speak, go ahead. I don't mind. I don't mind. Up to you.
Sorry, so the reply speech will be, preparation will be only for 1 minute. So I think the time is up. So now this is time for the reply speech. Starting with the opposition, please welcome the opposition summary speaker.
So, may I start? May I start?
Yeah, sorry, my internet went out. Is it time already?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, I would like to first, before I make my reply speech, I would like to ask the government, why are we trying to put responsibilities? Because the opposition doesn't even touch on responsibilities, and the point of our argument doesn't even touch on responsibilities. We are saying that yes, the developed countries are taking responsibilities of what they are producing, but we are also saying that the poor countries should also be obliged, not that the developed countries should not take responsibilities. This talk about morals, we don't talk about morals because in our debate, we are taking into account that we are basing our debate on that the developed nations has taken responsibilities, and that plus the poor nations also need to take responsibilities. This is our stance, and this is our points. So, bringing responsibilities should not be of concern. Then, you are taking about critical areas. Opposition has always stated that we think that critical areas also include, and this is the most important point, include green procedures. It is easy to bring in green procedures into critical areas such as housing. Make sure that public housing is in line with green codes. It is as easy as that. Let's say that if the people doesn't have cars, you make a good public transportation that will reduce the emissions. This is critical areas that government does hammer on. Governments, not our debates government, but the governments of the world does hammer on. That is transportations, developments and such. We are saying that while you are developing these critical areas, you must also bring in green procedures. So your arguments that is saying that critical areas, that we should use this money to develop critical areas, is very fraudulent, very fraudulent. So back to the government's, back to the opposition's point. Our first point is we base our points on the fact that we must be holistic in approach, that we must be able to make a sustainable economy, an economy that will survive, that will transcend time. That is our point into this motion. That is why we bring the first point of all countries is a growing contributor to climate change, that they are growing and they are contributing to climate change, so that they must try and regulate this. And our second argument shows that we want a holistic approach. We are saying that when we are creating green procedures for developing nations, that they will promote holistic economic growth to poor countries. And we know this because Malaysia has a developed economy, but our economy is having a hard time to transition because we doesn't include green economy. And the third one is as an accountability measure. Like I've said to Shazia, we know that there are legal jurisdictions, and even though developed nations want to impose their laws to developed nation, developed nations need to account to themselves. So that is my point. I will give it to the chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the summary and welcome to that. And I would like to welcome the last speaker of the government to sum up for the team and the debate as a whole. Okay.
Good.
Okay. So let's start.
Yep. You can start.
Okay. So yeah. So in this debate, we have been talking about these policies, implementing them in these poor countries. Okay. Now, what the government side was want to conclude about is that we are mainly focusing on that these richer countries are mostly like to take the responsibility because why taking the responsibility because they are the reasons and main reasons who have caused some kind of climatic change that cause the poor countries to uh, have a bad effect on many aspects like the factories and stuff, maybe air pollution stuff. Okay, so we say that I guess richer countries, uh, like even though there are no resources, even though we all agree that even though poor countries have no more resources, but still can oblige them. I say when richer countries take actions and they actually do it and then help these countries to develop in helping them to develop up and uh, give them stuff like provide them necessary stuffs so that like richer countries are more likely to be more affordable and protect poor countries even though the poor countries yeah, so even the poor countries, how do you say? Okay, even the poor countries are, not having those resources. I guess we are what the government is saying that richer countries should take responsibility because I guess taking those actions could by their higher or these countries can actually help the poor countries as well. So other thing what we want for countries, even though they have less resources and stuff, there's that these policies can actually help them develop a country. I don't think that making policies like even though it can help them in a very little time and it can help them prevent those stuff. I don't think it can help that country to develop because development of the country mainly focuses on other stuffs and these are just for short term so I guess focusing on those giving them more prioritizing as my the prime minister so focusing on them can actually help these countries to develop so what the opposition are telling us that these policies can develop so I think why we win this debate is that we have talked about these alternative measures other than these policies, which have to be obliged and kept on these poor countries, saying that you have to pay fine for this if you don't follow this. So I guess we have talked about other alternative measures like the support by the other countries when there are crises. Even though we say that taking preventive measures before the crisis is better than waiting for the crisis. So we have talked about it and we have explained why these policies can't properly help these or these countries to actually develop their nation and have a preventing, help them curb the climatic change. So yes, that's it for myself. Thank you to all the speakers for the great debate. Dearest Judge, you have a maximum of 10 minutes to give your verbal adjudications. The floor is now yours, the judge.
Don't I have some time to make the judgment? I think, yeah. Isn't there time allocated for that?
Yes, you can give like anything. If you
No,
have
no, I
anything
mean,
to say.
no, I mean, before I give my actual judgment, isn't there time allocated for the judge to, compare what has been talked about inside the debate?
Right.
Or are you unsure?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, I think, usually you will give some time to the judge. They won't immediately give their feedback. If you say I have 10 minutes, it's okay. Everyone can just wait in the Zoom. I'll just mute myself while I make my judgment. I will, yeah, so just be ready.
Judge or chair, can one of you help accept one of my teammates back into the Zoom? His battery died. He changed device and he's waiting for someone to let him in.
Yeah, I don't think I can do that in the chair. Yeah, I don't see any notifications.
I don't think I can do that too. But wait, I'll
Can't,
try to ask.
can't he join the main room and then join from the breakout room? I don't see.
Okay, I'll try to talk to him.
Yeah, join the main room and then join the breakout room again. In the meantime, yeah, I think like for mentioned in the chat, the debate ends at 12. I think the 10 minutes is actually for me to make my thoughts. So I think the 10 minutes is allocated for me to make judgment. Just stay in the room. I will let you guys know when I want to give my feedback. Oops, meeting myself now.
Judges, please remember to fill in the result in the Google spreadsheet we have forwarded in the group. Thank you.